You're listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast with Angela Henderson, episode 126. Hey there, you're listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast. My name is Angela Henderson, and on this show, we talk about improving your business, life, or both by having amazing and rich conversations with brilliant guests who will inspire you and who will give you tips and tricks to help you grow both in life and in business. Well, hey there, and welcome back to another awesome episode of the Business and Life Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ange, from Angela Henderson Consulting, where I'm an international award-winning business consultant and coach who has helped thousands of amazing women business owners get all the pieces in place to have consistent 5-figure months and then on to 6- and 7-figure years without burning out in the process. I don't know about you, but some of the content that I'm scrolling past these days on socials or that I'm receiving in my inbox from newsletters that I signed up for, it just sucks. There's no thought going into it, or even worse, I've now witnessed people taking other people's copy and trying to pretend that it's their own. I know it's hard to create fresh content. I know it's hard to get those ideas flowing. I get it. I used to be one of Australia's leading parenting influencers. I was signed with Netflix and Woolies, and I worked with international hotel chains like Club Med and the Hilton and a variety of others. I get it. Creating quality content can be tricky at the beginning, but the more I created quality content and understood how I could do it in an effective and efficient way, the easier it became. Content that would eventually stop people in their feed. This type of content that I would create was also getting people engaging with me, with my brand, and inevitably making me more money. And that's why today I'm super excited to bring on Jane Anderson, who's going to talk with us about content creation, specifically catalyst content. We're going to dive deep into, the understanding and the importance of creating world-class content that cuts through the noise and leads your tribe, and therefore leveraging that content to amplify your brand, your business, and your revenue. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about what is catalyst content, why is it important, and Jane is also going to share with us her 3 top things that you can do right now to create amazing content that cuts through the noise and helps build your business and brand. So sit back and get ready for an amazing, amazing episode with Jane Anderson and I. But before we hop into this awesome episode, I'd like to remind you that this episode is sponsored by my 12-month Accelerator Action Takers Mastermind for Women in Business. Applications are now open for 20 women and 20 women only to join me in 2021 for my 12-month online and in-person experience designed to get your business to the next level, to help you create those 5-figure months and on to 6- and 7-figure years without burning out in the process. The Action Takers Mastermind helps owners like you to get clarity on what and where to put your focus. It helps to give you genuine information on what's possible and what works and what's a waste of your time. The Mastermind is helpful with giving you feedback on your ideas, giving you different perspectives on your skills and your talents, introducing you to new clients and legs up to new opportunities, while at the same time giving you access to a community of people who understand and care about what you do, and so much more. During the 12-month Action Takers Mastermind, you're going to get one-on-one strategy sessions with me. You're going to get emergency calls with me when things start to go down in your business. You're going to get hot seat calls. You're going to get implementation and co-working sessions. You're going to get 12-month access to our private Facebook community, access to other mentors. I've got 11 other mentors that you're going to be able to also access, and not to mention 2 live events on the Gold Coast, Australia, hashtag if COVID allows it to happen. If not, it will be on Zoom like we did this year. Sound like my 12-month Action Takers Accelerator Mastermind might be what you need to get your business to the next level and make 2021 amazing? Make sure you head to angelahenderson.com.au, click on Mastermind, and join now, or AKA you're going to have to apply first. We'll then hop onto a discovery call and then just make sure that we're the right fit. So apply now at angelahenderson.com.au and make sure to click on Mastermind. All right, now let's get into this amazing, amazing episode. Welcome to the show, Jane.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here. It's been one of those things that I was like, I feel like I have known you for a very, very long time. But in fact, this is the first time that we've actually met. We've got a lot of mutual friends. We live very close together, but We've never actually hung out. So we've actually just spent the last, I think, almost 40 minutes talking before we actually hit record. Again, the beauty of podcasting and meeting good people is you can just pick up as if you guys have known each other for a very long time.
I know, isn't it amazing? You see people coming through your feed and read their posts and blogs. And I mean, that's the power of what we're going to be talking about today anyway, is that, it really does make you feel like you already know them anyway. So you sort of get that sense that you're a good fit to hang out together.
Exactly right. And again, obviously COVID, as we were talking about, there's so much stuff that's going on virtually, but it will be good. We'll have to arrange one of these days for us to connect in real life.
Absolutely.
So Jane, one of the things I always like to do is I always like to ask my guests a fun question so that they get the opportunity to get to know you a little bit before we hop into the business side of things. And I know you recently just welcomed to your home a brand new puppy, again, a British Bulldog puppy. Again, we've got a lot of already common, and we also both love the color pink. And
Yes.
so my question to you is what's the best trick that you've taught that brand new puppy of yours?
Well, one of the goals that I had when I was growing up as a kid, I used to do a lot of roller skating and skateboarding, and probably not as much now. And one of the things that was a bit of a goal that I said, I watched all these bulldogs, and you have one as well now.
Yes.
Very exciting with little Grateful. So because of their stature and the way their body moves and their center of gravity, I'd always seen these videos of people with bulldogs that could teach their bulldogs how to ride a skateboard. And I was like, I would love to do that. That's an amazing goal to have. And so I got a little puppy skateboard and so we've started, and so he knows how to ride that, except now he's a bit big for it. So I had to upgrade to this Flash skateboard. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm buying this skateboard. So, but he absolutely loves it, like just cries if I have to go and put it away. He could just play with that skateboard. So we are in the process of, we've nearly got 4 feet on. He keeps jumping to 4 feet. So we definitely got the 2 paws and he can push himself. But now we're almost at 4 paws, but it just takes, as everything does, consistency, practice, commitment, and lots of treats.
Lots of treats. Gosh, you'd have to, do you know what I mean? But again, once he gets the hang of it, he'd just be able to rock and roll. And bulldogs, I mean, listen, they're the cutest little things. I know lots of people say they're ugly, but it's like, I saw when you got yours, and I was like, oh, we're so close to getting our little British Bulldog Grateful. And again, as we were talking about pre-recording, they are such a wonderful addition. But I would be lying and saying if they aren't hard work, as a business owner. They're hard work. So if you're out there, know that you're going to get a lot of gratitude from them, but just be prepared. They're hard work. But again, that little smile and those little wrinkles, keep me going every single day.
Yeah, we'll have to do a doggy date.
Oh gosh, yeah, 100%. Like I would be up for that. I think they even have like a Brisbane British Bulldog meetup. So yeah, well, we should totally go and take the dogs. That's so fun. And we can talk about business while we're there, because we were talking about before we press record that actually owning a dog is a lot like having a business. And so I'm going to do a post about that later. But yes, we could talk about a variety of things. Yeah, now, Jane, listen, I've been following you for a few years now, and I know you've done some amazing things in the business realm. You've worked with Virgin Australia, you've worked with Lego, you've worked with IKEA, Rio Tinto, and a variety of others. And my thing is I know you've also been voted in the top 3 branding experts globally, which is just phenomenal. So can you tell us a little bit about you, how you got started in business, where you were and where you're at now?
Yeah, sure. So I guess growing up, I grew up in country New South Wales, and so I'm in Brisbane now. But I was fortunate enough really early in my career to work for a family called the Mathers family. So while I was going to school, I worked for, and if you're in Australia and you may have come across the Mathers shoes family, if you were forced to wear Clark's school shoes, maybe you had to go and get your school shoes fitted. But I was really lucky to work for them. I worked for the family for 15 years, and Sir Robert Mathers was, the head of the family and knighted by the Queen. And what I really learnt from working with them, and I went on to work with Tracy Mathers, who's his eldest daughter. So, worked with the family for a really long time. And what I learnt from working with them from a really young age, and this was long before social media or anything like that, the value of your reputation, your name, and your sense of community and how you run a business. So after working with them, I went on to work in government. I worked for large organisations. I ran the training and development teams for an organisation with around 10,000 people. And then after a while decided that I actually knew that I would always have my own business from when I was a young child. I knew when I was about 10. But just needed to sort of get to a point where it was the right time for me to do that. So started my business part-time. I was working full-time and, seeing clients. I just started coaching people on Monday nights, Thursday nights and Saturday mornings.
Oh, brilliant.
Working crazy hours for a year. And it was sort of that accelerator clutch thing, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And I really started in the career space and working with people in the leadership space and working with CEOs or executives and helping them with where it started was a lot of global mobility and writing LinkedIn profiles for people.
Okay.
Because back then LinkedIn was a big global thing, not so much in Australia at the time. And then from there went on to really work in personal branding, content creation, and now that's based around helping people with, tribe building and content creation off the back of their personal brand.
And so content obviously has it's been in your world for a very long time. Did you always know it as content, or was that something that you had to kind of embrace throughout those, years of being in business?
Yeah, good question. When I started my business, which was, as I said, way back, over 10 years ago now, and part-time 11 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. I remember thinking, because of my retail days, I understood the value of a database, and I understood the value of, because back in retail days, my job was to go in and improve the revenue of the stores. I was an area manager, and my average, typically when I went into a store, I would generally double the revenue of a store within 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So what that came back to was the value of communicating with a database and knowing your customers really well. So when I started my business, it just felt like a natural progression to me to make sure I have a list and make sure I blog or have some kind of communication. Now, I wasn't selling shoes, but I had to educate my audience. So I think being an educator and a trainer and facilitator, as well as a background in retailing, was really the start of just making sure I was somehow communicating with people each week. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was just, I knew it worked in a different context. And as a result, then went on and just started to write and started to get more followers and started to get a lot of traffic to the blog, and then started to understand a little bit more about the value of communicating with customers and not just waiting to be found.
And I like how you've reframed it there, as I think a lot of times people that I know that I work with are like, content, it's just writing this or it's just doing this, but you've beautifully been able to marry that up with it's communicating, really. Do you know what I mean? And that content can be delivered in a variety of communication ways, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later on. But for the purposes of this, I really want to hone in on kind of a term you may have coined, or a term that you may have heard, but that catalyst content. So just so that we all kind of have a baseline for those listeners out there, can you just describe the difference between content and catalyst content?
Yeah. So if you look at the content creation world, where it's come from, so if you look at content creation in terms of social media content, videos, written blogs, newsletters, all that sort of stuff, videos, YouTube, all that is content. If you look at what a standard piece of content might be, is that could be anything from a cat video to something that's a branded piece of content, something that's something like a story. It could be a how-to guide, and so being able to work out, well, what is the difference between content and catalyst content? In my opinion, is catalyst content is really about content that drives positive change. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you're trying to create a positive impact and to be able to lead a conversation. So, for example, at the moment, I don't only work with small business owners, but my particular space is working with thought leaders and really around the space of thought leadership marketing using content. But equally, if you're a leader within an organisation at the moment, I'm working with a global multinational. We've got the entire C-suite and executive team all creating content on Facebook Workplace. Mm-hmm. And to be able to drive change and going through business transformation. So we all have the need to do this and get cut through. The key thing that's happening at the moment, if you look at back in 2015, the content creation industry was $150 billion industry. Mm-hmm. Next year, it will be a $421 billion industry. So mm-hmm. It's not big jump. The key thing is what happens when you've got this massive drive around demand for content. and people consuming content, the average person's on social media consuming stuff over 2 hours a day. Mm-hmm. The issue that happens is that people start outsourcing that. They go, I'll just get someone offshore. I'll buy my $5 an article thing and throw it up on the website. Mm-hmm. So the issue with that is that creates noise. It doesn't actually add value. And so it stops change. So the people that when I'm working with them, I go, but what I'm looking for is your content catalyst content? Does it actually drive a change? Mm-hmm. And that means whether it's you're trying to highlight issues, whether you're trying to lead organizations, whatever it might be. So it's really about trying to work out. I love, Seth Godin says that content marketing is the only marketing that's left. Mm-hmm. And Anne Handley, who wrote the book Everybody Writes, New York Times bestseller, she says the world doesn't need more content; it needs better content. Mm-hmm. And I reckon she's right.
I agree. It kind of reminds me, another book of Seth Godin's is The Purple Cow. I reference it regularly, right? As he's driving along in France and he sees these brown and black cows and white cows, and all of a sudden he sees the purple cow. And he talks about your business collectively, right? Because things are so noisy in this particular space of the online space that we live in. Is that what are you doing to become the purple cow? Because the purple cow is going to be okay for at least a little while, right? Until people get used to it again and it becomes part of the noise. And so do you think that with that catalyst content is it's not necessarily creating hundreds of thousands of pieces of content, but creating quality pieces of content that are going to be able to, like you said, help transform those individuals that are reading it, make their life a little bit better, and really start to disrupt the feed? Is that what you're looking for when you look at that catalyst content?
Yes, spot on. So it's really looking at really defining what are the problems that people are having, what are the challenges that they've got, and which comes with deep empathy and compassion and understanding, and then taking the time to really educate them. I think we've all got to, you might say, well, I am in this type of business, or we're a goods-based business. Well, guess what? We're all in the education business now. We all have to work out how are you, because if you're not educating your clients and not educating your customers, you're spamming them. That's about it. So unless you have a way to stay connected to them, you can only do that if you're adding value. And you're spot on, is that if you're going to add value, then you need to make the value that you actually bring amplify. And the only way you can do that is if you know how to educate your customer to help them to solve their problems. And that's the shift. That's helping them to transform and create that catalyst and that change.
I know for myself, like over the years with my first business, Finley and Me, as I was one of the top influencers here in the parenting space. I was signed with Netflix, a variety of other brands. And the content that, again, it took me longer to write. I'm not going to lie about it. Okay. It took me longer because it was thought provoking. I had to, put energy into understanding all of those pieces. But once you started to understand your audience better, it became like exercising a muscle. It became a little bit easier, and that the content didn't take as long to write. Yes. But at the beginning it does, because you feel like, oh my goodness, well, why can't I just throw the cat video up, right? Everyone else is doing it. Yeah. So the cat video can do really well if there's a message and transformation behind that, right? That kind of tells a story. And once I learned to tell the stories that people wanted to hear, is even today is, yes, I'm not writing catalyst content all the time, but you can always tell when the catalyst content goes out, because you have more people hitting reply to your email. You've got more people commenting. You've got more people going, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I'm thinking. And therefore, I believe, and I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are, is when you've got that catalyst content and you do have the transformation, is what you leave, that digital imprint, that emotional imprint you leave from a branding and business point of view, far outweighs what the competitors are doing. What are your thoughts?
Oh, spot on. It's the same as kind of what you were talking about with dogs. Like, it's like I can watch dogs riding skateboards till the cows come home, but on a YouTube video or something like that. But we're all at a point at some stage, whether we're buying dogs, whether we need help in a business, whether we need an accountant, whether we need whatever it might be, is at some point there's something that's a challenge for you, and we're trying to find someone who we trust to help us with this problem. So in our case, we've been looking at having a bulldog for over a year. We looked at every blog, I've watched every YouTube video, but I really wanted a great breeder. And so as a result of looking at all that and this person's content and the blogs and all the information that they had, is that, that's a big deal for any family, big change. You want to make sure you're making the right decision. And so as a result, that built trust. And as a result, then being able to find, well, I think this person understands what I'm trying to get. This person is a good fit for us. This breeder is a good fit for us. And I think we're going to get a good product. But not just that, I'm going to feel supported. I'm going to feel like I can ask questions. I'm going to feel like I've got a goal that I'm trying to achieve, but I'm going to do it well. So, but I need advice, and I need someone we can trust who can help us do this. So I think it's the same.
So to kind of recap, some of it you've already talked about, but I'm curious to know a little bit more about the how and the why is it important for businesses today to create this Catalyst content. I know you talked about, again, that know, like, trust factor. Also just the fact that, again, you need to be able to create the disruptive content so that, again, that you're leaving an impression. But I would also assume that from a revenue and profitability point of view, that when you create Catalyst content, it's important for your business because it's going to impact growth. Is that true?
Spot on. So if, for example, so I'd say with the clients I work with, we put a value around each piece of content to work out how much revenue it would actually drive if they optimize that piece of content to its potential. On average, each piece of content that I get people to create in the formula that I show them, we've typically found that the average piece of content will generate somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 in revenue. Now, I've had pieces of content that have generated a lot more than that. There's one piece that I've created, Expert to Influencers, generated over $2.5 million in revenue for my own practice. So it's so by creating it, it's not just about content and throwing it up on a blog. What you're doing is you're creating the assets, particularly when you have a knowledge-based business. If you don't have content, if you don't have IP, then you don't have assets built that can be leveraged. So you have to really look at this as in, these are the assets that I am building for my business, and I need to leverage them to their potential. So that's certainly the why, if that's the space that you want to work in. But even if you don't have a knowledge-based business, in your case, it's about driving revenue and continuing to keep customers connected to what the value that you bring into the problems you solve.
And I also, go
keeping
ahead.
them, that conveyor belt, keeping them coming into your business. Because guess what? If you're not communicating with them, someone else is.
All the time. And that's what, when I talk about consistency is I'm here for the long term, right?
Yeah.
And I get told often, and you're everywhere. Well, no, I choose particular platforms, that I know my ideal client is on. I'm not actually on LinkedIn. People keep pushing me over there. I just can't get over there. I don't know what it is, but it's not my space. One day maybe, but just not the moment. So I choose where my audience is sitting. But the key thing that has been in 10 years of my business is I've still shown up daily consistently. Now, I'm not saying that I'm showing up live or posting that stuff organically. A lot of that is scheduled content. But we still have it that it's, and it's not all Catalyst content. Let me make that very clear. I'd say it's probably 70-80% Catalyst content. The rest is kind of, I call filler content. So it's like we're sharing a podcast or with that, there's still value there, but it hasn't gone into hardcore Catalyst content creation. But that's the difference. So like, but you're everywhere. I'm like, it will appear that I'm everywhere, but all we're doing is being consistent. How much do you think creating Catalyst content is one point, but how much of that is also around creating consistent Catalyst content and consistently showing up?
Yeah, great. It's probably in the context of a lot of social stuff you're saying. So I always think that people want to know that they're dealing with a human being, like they have some kind of connection to you. So it's not that Catalyst content has to be every single piece of content that you put out. Like, for example, and you're a great example of this, is where you have some pieces of content that you go out where it is Catalyst content, where it's about sharing the research, the stories, the metaphors, the reasons, the modeling that you need to use. Here's what you need to do to educate. If you're a small business owner, particularly female business owner, here's some things you need to think about. If we heard that from you every day, we'd probably start to get a bit bored, really. Because we go, oh, here's Angela with a teacher's hat on again. But I want to hear that because I need to know that there's some substance behind you and that you can help me. But if I hear it every single day, then that gets a bit boring. What I do want to see is I want to see a balance, and I still want to be able to see that you have a new puppy and you're on holidays and you have kids and, you're back to school this week and you go, wow, like she's a human. She's just like me. So you still need that balance of human content, or what I call personality content. So I think there's sort of three things. There's visibility, credibility, and personality. So visibility is typically curated content. So you might share something that someone else has done. You say, hey, I saw this today. This is really interesting. This links to what we're talking about at the moment. So that's, I would say, visibility. Then there's other pieces, which is credibility, which is definitely the catalyst content type content. And the third part is personality content, where I'm in part of your world, and maybe you're hanging out at the beach today, and that looks cool because that's kind of something I like doing too. And that is really connects you at a human level.
And I go on the podcast, I talk a lot about human to human marketing and the experience and interaction one faces with a particular brand. And sometimes you'll have the interaction, but you don't have the experience, or other times you have the experience of the interaction. And that personable content that you talk about, I think, is so important. But often I hear business owners, or women in business in particular, say, my audience, surely they don't want to hear about this, or they don't want to hear about that. But I believe audiences do want us to share that behind the scenes stuff. Now, I'm not saying if you're off doing tequila shots 80 times a day that's necessarily going to help you. But again, that stuff that allows them to see you, like you said, as a human. And so I think I know your answer, but how important do you think it is to have part of that catalyst content behind showing the scenes? Like you've kind of touched upon it, but I just think that from a human perspective and from an emotional perspective, people long to feel like you're just another normal human being, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Like you can still have catalyst content that has perhaps some of your own story in it and your own personal transformations and things like that. But if you looked at metrics, if you had to say what's a nice number, I typically look for a piece of catalyst content ideally going out each week. And personality content, when I call personality content, I call it like a day in the life of. So a day in the life of is you might be out, at the beach today with the kids, but tomorrow you could be speaking at a conference. So what's the snapshot of the day in the life? So the beauty is day in the life stuff does not have to be done every day. But if you've got your catalyst content going out each week at least, if you're showing up most days on social, fantastic, that's great. But even if you can't get to that each day, then at least if you've got your catalyst content going each week, is you've got some level of influence and positioning so that when you go to do sales calls and you reach out and building your community, is that you've got some credibility. But people also want to know that, that if you've got a bit of that day in the life of content, then you'll get that human connection and the balance and the marry up. Because if you've only got day in the life of content going up, then I remember I had someone that came to me who, and she put day in the life of content up every single day. And I saw it at a conference and I said, you know what, you and I have been connected a long time on Facebook, but I actually have no idea what you do. Right. I see you every single day. And she said, I'm a business coach. And I was like, really? I never knew that. And it was because she just had personality content up every day. But if she had a piece of catalyst content going out each week, then I might actually be able to send her some referrals. Right. But I had no idea, even after 2 years of being connected to her, I had no idea that's what she did.
Right. So the balance of being able to marry up the different types of content to make sure that, again, you're getting those credibility pieces while still infusing your personality behind it and still increasing that visibility to help leverage your credibility and authority is really, again, about you're towing a fine line to make sure that, again, that there's a, like you said, a formula behind that, because I think, again, so often it's easy for people maybe to do personality content, but not the other. But again, the more you do it, the easier it will become. And so I guess my next question is what are your top kind of three business, top three businesses or things that businesses can do now to start creating that kind of catalyst content that cuts through the noise? Like what would you be suggesting if people are out there going, damn, yep, that's me. All I do is do personality, or I'm always just giving, a tip Monday, tip Tuesday, tip Wednesday. Yeah. Like what are the top three things that businesses can start doing to creating that content to cut through the noise?
Yeah, so the first thing I would do is make sure you're strategic about what you're creating and it aligns with what you want to sell and deliver. So in that case, let's say you're delivering, if I'm a fashion business or a beauty business, what are the problems that people have with their skin, or what are the problems that, so really think about, well, what are all the things that I know about that? So or even if you're a leadership expert, then what are 10 things that you know about leadership? And like you said, Angela, you said people go, but do people really want to know this stuff? Don't they already know it? Or they say, there's so much written about this out there. What could I possibly contribute? They can just Google it. But the trick is that they want to hear it from you. There's only one of you, and that's the version of that, and that essence of you is what can't be replicated. So the first thing is just jot down, and I typically get people to a list of 50 things. Imagine, because that's going to be a blog each week, a piece of content and Catalyst content each week. Right, tell me 50 things that you know about blah, about leadership, about skincare, about fashion, about whatever it might be. Then from there is then what I do. So I put people into boot camps and content clubs. So we put people into a room, and I show them the formula of how to unpack it. And what we unpack is a story, a metaphor, a key piece of research. And the one thing that people get stuck on is research. And you can actually find research very quickly if you can sort of, have a go, and once you learn how to do it. Because it was Aristotle who was the communicator's communicator, and he said that you need to be able to reference people who your audience admire, you need to be able to tell stories, and you need to be able to do your research and provide evidence to support your claims. So if you can put those three things into a piece of content, I typically teach people how to do that in less than 10 minutes. And so that's the second thing. If you said, well, what do you do with that? So the first thing is write down all the things you know. The second thing is to be able to create the piece of content and create it quickly. So most people take about an hour to do it the first time because they've never done it. But once they've done it, then we typically do it in 10 minutes. And then the third thing they need to do is leverage it. So don't just let that single piece of content, get put away and you go, oh, I have to go and create something else next week. On average, most of the clients I work with, we typically will leverage one piece of content around between 30 to 40 ways, sometimes most up to around nearly 100 ways. So with that one piece of content, it could be a video, it could be a podcast, it could be an interview series, it could be it could go on a LinkedIn post. It could go into a white paper. It could go into a chapter in a book. It could go into so many different things. So I really encourage people to think once and use often, and really repurpose what they've got, because just because you know that it went in a newsletter last week, the person who's buying your book doesn't know that. And it's not that you're not ripping people off or anything like that. You're just putting it into accessible formats of where different people can access it. And if you can do that, because the reality was that I had someone, I get a lot of people who come to me and say, you're prolific, you create a lot of content, you've written 7 books, how do you do it all? And I say to them, I have a confession. And my confession is that I actually don't create a huge amount of content. I leverage each content to its potential is what I do.
I think that's super important, because that's a piece that I know when I start speaking with my own clients about it, is I'm like, listen, we need to really look at your content strategy and what platforms and how are we going to utilize this? And they're like, yeah, but if I do it once, then, it seems like a lot of work. And it's like, not if we can repurpose it, if we can turn it into something else. I know when my team and I were looking at our stuff over our socials over the last little while, we were creating really great Instagram quality Catalyst posts.
Great.
And we were just doing shit over on our Facebook page to tick a box, right? It was like, oh, we posted this. So then what I said to the team is I said, well, listen, if we get ahead of the bank with our content on Instagram, there's years worth of content. Why are we not just repurposing that onto the other platforms? So now we're able to use Airtable, where we're able to pull the content from Instagram. That goes then into a queue. And then my team then know to schedule it 2 weeks after. Because here's the thing is, you're lucky if 5% of your stuff gets seen in the algorithm. And in my entire 10 years of writing copious amounts of content, no one has ever emailed me and said, I've seen this content piece too many times. Please don't share it again. Right? That's right. And so now that we've gotten a little bit more clever around that Catalyst content creation on one platform and being able to redistribute it has been, a game changer for us. Because sometimes I think we lose sight of that. I'm always big about repurposing, but then it's like something new comes in and you get distracted. Like, hold on, we got to go back to the basics. I think sometimes we try and make things have more bells and whistles than are needed than just going back to the primary foundations, which is, again, utilize what's already in front of you.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing what's there. And we even find for some people that they'll sort of get on this roll of new stuff and we go, hold on, look at all this old stuff that's still there and it's still relevant. Nothing's changed. So it can still be reused. So I love that. I love that you're using, and I think even you mentioned, the technology is looking into some of the tools like Airtables and things like that, where you can pull some of this stuff and get some automations and things in place so that you can make your systems really easy to do it.
I also want to talk about leveraging, because one thing that I'm very big on, especially with Facebook at the moment, is so many people are reliant on the social media side of things, and utilizing and distributing and leveraging off of those social contents, where I'm really big also about building your own ecosystem and building your own asset in your own race course. And so one of the things, and I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are, but it's not perfect, but we try every piece, either every podcast or every blog post, that is going up, is that we're then SEO optimizing it for keywords, alt text, SEO titles. And I know I'm getting a bit complex, but really search engine optimization, which is, SEO, and how people find you in Google, that if you're spending this time creating this piece, I call it almost spike marketing, is typically you will have a piece of content that goes out, you get viewers to it because you've obviously distributed it in marketing channels, but then it goes away until you repurpose it again. Whereas I'm all about creating content and then optimizing it so that it's working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And for me is I like to leverage it by SEO optimizing it. Now, you might not be able to SEO optimize all of yours, but what you might do is hire an SEO specialist to come in every quarter, tidy up all the pieces that you've done. And then we're getting hits, hundreds of hits every single month from those pieces of content because people are finding us. And then we've got a call to action in each of those pieces of content to then either get them on our email list or booking a discovery call. So then it also acts as our funnel. Is that similar to what your thoughts are?
Spot on. It's spot on. So I just get people, the main thing I get people is into a cadence and a rhythm of creating the content. And then the next thing we do is do exactly that, is we say, okay, now what you've got to do is get it working for you. So you've worked it as much as you can. And now what you need to do is hand it over to the SEO experts. So whether it's they go through your website, whether they SEO all those videos, whatever it might be, and I love your cadence of quarterly. I think that's brilliant, is just to come in and go, okay, I just need to make sure. And you don't have to be the SEO expert. Stay in your genius. Just keep creating the content and get them in to do that. And I love that, that you've got the spikes to just keep them moving. And I always think about content as the start of the conveyor belt. So, you've got to keep, what's the next step? Where are they going to move to from there? So if they're going into discovery calls and things like that, keep them moving and not just let content out there. So that's perfect.
Well, my thing is you spend all the time to create the catalyst content. And so if you get 1,000 people reading that content and you've got no way to carry the conversation on after, I'm just like, again, you've fallen flat on creating all this content. Right. I also think about this, the importance of you never know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, I talk about it often as, my grandmother passed away on Christmas. My brother then passed away on Mother's Day. A father type figure passed away on New Year's. And then this is about a couple of years ago. And then another business friend passed away the same year. And, a good best friend of mine just died recently. So I've had an enormous amount of death. But what I have found, though, is by creating a bank of quality content, that if I had to take a month off of podcasting, if I had to take a month off of writing, if I had to do all of that, we would still have enough content to just keep repurposing. And so it's I know people look at it as a short term. I look at it as long term and how it can benefit your business for those times of, unexpected death. So, I think it's important that you can always continue to leverage these pieces more than what you already have.
Oh, that's so spot on. And first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about, what an incredible and difficult time because you need, for a lot of business owners, things happen and you need space and you can't think about, even running your business sometimes when you get hit with such traumatic, news and things that happen, or maybe you become unwell, touch wood, or, things like that can happen. And so you're spot on is your content keeps you visible and it keeps you staying memorable and referable. So you can go and focus on what you need to do and look after yourself and do some self-care or spend time with family, whatever it is that you need to go and do. and all your content will be carrying the weight for you.
Yes.
So that's spot on. Yeah, absolutely.
So I decided to think it's so important that it's a long-term strategy again. Short-term gain, yes, maybe. But again, it's about the longevity of the business, because we're not here just for a year or two, really. Most people are here for as long as they can be. So now for those people that are out there like, okay, I'm probably doing a few things wrong. You talk about being able to create content quickly. Jane, where can listeners find you if they're sitting there going, I'm going to need a little bit of help with this?
Yeah. Feel free to jump on the website. So the website's jane-anderson.com, or I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, reach out to me. What I'm happy to do is shoot you a copy of Catalyst content, which I've just written. And so that can go out. You can have a look at the process and start to think about and really look at, well, am I really optimizing my content? And what you might even find is that you've possibly got some content there that you could even repurpose just to get started, and even then, and then think strategically about what you want. So yeah, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to shoot you that, and get you creating some Catalyst content and less cat videos.
Yes, exactly right. Now, listen, my final question. Yeah, we won't ever cut the bulldog videos, but we will cut the cat videos. All right. Now, my final question, though, that I like to ask everyone is, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first started out in business?
Oh, what do I know now that I wish I knew? What I know now that I wish I knew, and I thought I knew this years ago, and I touched on it a little bit with, back with Sir Robert and back when I started, and really understanding community and the dynamics of communities and how they work. And I think, people really do want to feel like they belong somewhere. And I think as a business owner, really content, and the reason why I get passionate about content is not just because about writing and getting your ideas out there. It's about people need to feel like they belong somewhere. And as a business owner, the more that you can create a sense of belonging for your clients, and not just, I got an email from somewhere, I bought a puppy thing the other day, and they said, thankfully you're now in our community. Please, what did they say? Here's your loyalty card. A loyalty card is not community. Community is where your job is to lead a community. And if you can shift, what I learned is I needed to shift my mindset from a transaction mindset to a tribe mindset, and that I'm a leader of a community. And if you can do that, and I wish I understood that a long time ago, and I'm glad I know it now, but I wish I'd just learned it quicker, then that is the absolute game changer if you can do that.
And I totally agree. Again, when I talk about human-to-human marketing at different speaking events, as I talk about it, so often people are out there trying for the transaction, always a transaction. And I'm like, once you can identify that there's people behind these transactions, who families to feed, whatever that looks like for them, is that it's stop chasing the transaction, right? And so much goodness can happen, especially again, when you lead with love, you lead with heart, you lead with integrity, and Catalyst content can allow that to happen, as you can lead in so many different ways in order to bring your buyers, in that community on that journey. Yeah. And I also believe one of my quotes that I talk often about is conversations equal connections. And when you have conversations and connections, you ultimately will have conversions. People are missing out on the conversations, and people are missing the connections, and then questioning, why are they not profitable?
That's right.
I'm like, go back to the basics.
Yeah.
So yes, well, no, thank you so much. And before we sign off, I just want to remind everyone that my team and I will also be putting together the show notes for this episode at angelahenderson.com.au. And as I mentioned earlier, if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it, especially over on Instagram. You can tag me at Angela Henderson, the consulting. You can also tag Jane at _Jane_Anderson_. And I'd also love for you to take a second to either subscribe to the podcast or leave a review. But for the rest of you, I hope you have a beautiful day, no matter where you are in the world. And thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to you joining me again next week for another amazing episode of the Business and Life Conversations podcast. Thanks again, Jane. Have an awesome day.
Thank you too, Angela. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Business and Life Conversations podcast with Angela Henderson. www.angelahenderson.com.au